What's up, YouTube? I'm Robert, and this is the Biker Channel, or the Biker Bar Channel. Here we are on episode 48. Imagine that. It's been quite a ride so far, coming into season 2 pretty hot. Pretty stoked about that. I'm excited to see everybody that's here. Thanks for showing up. I appreciate that. Good to see you all. Got a few things to say to everybody first before we get started. Got a couple of sponsors for the show. I'm going to talk about them in a second. But first, I want to talk about all you guys out there that are on my Patreon, man. I really appreciate it. You guys make this thing happen on both channels, whether it's the Biker Bar Podcast or it's the Biker Channel. If it wasn't for you guys on Patreon, honestly, I probably would have quit a long time ago. So if you're here, you're listening, if you're listening on a podcast, actually, man, can I speak today or what? If you're listening on a podcast, do me a favor and swing by that podcast app and give it a rating. Like if you're on Apple or something like that, and hopefully it's a good rating. If not, actually, you don't need to worry about it. So we'll see how that goes. Nonetheless, also subscribe and like. I'm trying to hit that 1,000 mark. We're like 300 away right now. So if you guys can get me to 1,000, I'd be super stoked about that. So back to the sponsors. The show sponsor that's been on for a while, you guys have heard me talk about for quite some time, is Project 321. They do bulletproof hub, man. I'm telling you, I've been riding this thing for a long time. I'm not up here just talking about it because he decided to sponsor the show. I really like their stuff. I've been talking about it for the last few weeks. There is there is also a code that if you want to use over at the project321.com website, Biker Bar Baller. So BIKER BALLER, Biker Bar Baller. No B1, right? Weird. So anyways, if you use that, that'll get you 10% off of a hub or a wheel build. So, I mean, they have all the major brands. So whether it's Envy or Stans or whatever it is that you're looking for, they got all those hoops. So go definitely check out their website and hit them up. Outside of that, we have another sponsor, but before we talk about them, I'm actually going to bring on this week's guest, and that is Skills with Phil, or Phil Kmetz. I think it's Metz. Let's see what it is. How's it going, man? Right. It's Metz. It's a K at the beginning, man. It screws me up every time.
Yeah, it screws everybody up.
I think we even talked about this the last time you were on the show, and it's just like, for whatever reason, I just want to say Kmetz or something. I don't know. So
it's a good conversation starter. So
right, there you go. So the other sponsor that I wanted to mention is Tasco. You guys are probably familiar with them. Their website's tascomtb.com, and they sent us both a set of gloves, and I'm going to go ahead and throw them up on the screen for those of you guys that are watching. And these are the brand new Pathfinder gloves. They're pretty slick, man. I actually just took them out of the box. Phil, you said you actually took them for a ride already?
Yeah, I did.
What'd you think?
Yeah, so compared to the old model, they definitely fit a little bit more snug. So I think that's something that they refined over the years, and they felt really good.
Yeah, definitely putting them on, I could feel, and I feel like it's this way with all Tasco gloves. Like they're pretty tight around the wrist. So when I was putting them on, I was like, they don't slide on super easy, but they're definitely constructed like a bit heavier duty than the regular ones.
Yeah, I think this is going to be for people who like a little bit more material on the palms, because they have like a little. The last ones I really liked because it was very minimal.
I've been digging the minimal ones lately too.
Yeah, and like I'm a fan of a nose strap kind of glove where it's like super easy to put on, but there are people who like a little bit more tighter fitting gloves. So I think this is great for their product line.
Yeah, definitely. It does have a wrist strap, so that, like you just mentioned, I think that's some kind of special Velcro that they got on there. I remember reading on their website or something like that. But the thing I did notice that I like is the gloves kind of come high on your wrist, but then they're cut out for like the side of your like wrist, so that when your hand's flexing backwards, that the glove's not digging into your arm. So definitely go check out Tasco's website. I'll have a link and show more after the show that you can click and get over there. I think it also has a discount on it as well. So I just don't have it available in the show note more right now. But in the meantime, I'm pretty stoked to get these thing out on the trail and see how they feel. Speaking of sponsors, I saw a video that you had on your site a while ago that you just changed a bunch of sponsors around, right?
Yeah, so changed. It was more or less I I'm no longer working with Fox, and I think that one's a little bit confusing because a lot of people confuse Fox suspension with Fox Racing, and Fox Racing is a clothing sponsor.
Yeah. Fox has a bunch of brands to them that a lot of people I don't think realize are all separate companies, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, they were related back in the day because I mean, I'm not like a super nerd on this topic, but there was two brothers or something, and it was one company at one point. One guy took the suspension side of things, and one guy took the clothing side of things. And so, if you look at Fox Suspension, it has a tail as a logo, and if you look at Fox Clothing, they have a head as a logo. So one got heads, one got tail.
Oh, that's funny. Dude, you're apparently more of a nerd about it than I am. I didn't know that at all. That was really cool.
I mean, it's one of those things where like you hear, like, I don't know if it's actual truth or just
right.
But no, go on.
No, I was gonna just make a joke. I was like, it's really like two guys arm wrestled and then they split it up, you know.
It sounds like it. That's pretty much what the case was.
I think if we just talk about it on the internet, it'll become the truth, right?
Exactly.
We just make a Facebook post and, you know, everybody will like it and share it. Next thing you know, it's fact.
Yeah. And so back to your question, I'm still working with GT. GT I worked with last year, and I kind of worked with them before doing some product testing for them back when they were developing a new downhill bike.
Oh wow!
They needed a downhill racer that was unaffiliated with a company, but who was also talented. And since I was a professional downhill racer at the time, and I rode for a bike shop essentially, I wasn't affiliated with any specific bike company. I fit that bill. So one of my friends who had just gotten a job at the company, I knew him pretty well, and so he reached out to me, and it was a pretty cool experience. And then, you know, as my channel grew, this is a kind of opportunity that came up. You know, I saw them as a company that really needed help. Kind of, I think some of their bikes in the past started to veer off, like they were starting to fall off. It was, for the time, it was a great suspension design, but as suspension gets better and better, and I didn't think they were keeping up as well as they could have, and they needed some real help. And so, since it's an East Coast based company, I really wanted to work with them more than any other company. I thought, like, I knew some of the people, really awesome people to work with. So as far as companies go, it was a really good fit for me.
How long have you been with them? Have they always been your bike sponsor, or do you have another bike sponsor in the past? So
I've never had a bike sponsor like this.
Oh, okay.
So this is my, like, in terms of what I'm now using as a definition for a sponsor, they were one of my first real sponsors.
Oh wow, right on, dude. They have Hans Ray too, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big now. I talked to him on the show a long time ago. He's pretty cool to talk to. It's funny because I'm not like a guy that knows a lot of pro riders. Like most of the pro riders that I know their names, I've met in person now. You know, so like beforehand, I really didn't know a lot of guys. And some of my friends ran into him in Sedona, and they came back to the hotel room. They're like, dude, we got Hans Ray. He's going to be on your show. And I'm like, I don't even know who that is. Who's Hans Ray? You know? And so it's this big joke with us about like, who's Hans Ray? I don't know. Who's Hans Ray? But yeah, no, he's a super cool guy, man. GT, I agree with you. Like, I know of them from when I was a kid. They were a good BMX bike.
Yep.
And that's the way I remember them. And whenever I got more into mountain biking, I didn't really hear anybody talk about them. So I agree with you on their brand kind of like needed some revitalization.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up racing BMX, and some of my best BMX race results were on a BMX bike made by GT.
Yeah.
And my first one was made by Powerlight, which is also at the time was a GT company or a GT affiliate company.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But anyway, yeah, and like they actually had a pretty cool design. Mongoose and a few others use like this iDrive, which is like this floating bottom bracket. So like you had your rear triangle, your front triangle, and then the bottom bracket was another link, and so it wasn't attached to.
Oh, okay.
The bad, like, so it pedaled really, really well. It was really efficient, The bad thing about it is the way that the suspension worked. If you're a flat pedal rider like me, because I rode a Mongoose for a little bit that used this design, and you hit a bump, the pedals would actually kick backwards on you, and your feet would come off the pedals.
A little kickback.
Yeah, and now each one of the brands had a different variation of this design. And I think over the years, GT was able to refine that and make it as good as it could get. But at the end of the day, it was one of the things that, I believe they felt was holding them back. So they needed to do a whole just redo of their suspension, their product line, and
yeah. I want to say that that floating brake that Eminent uses was part of the reason that they did that was because of pedal kickback and brake jack, I think.
There are a few companies that did a floating brake. My first downhill bike had a floating brake.
Oh, right on. So you said when you first started working with them a long time ago, you were testing to help them come up with a new downhill bike. That sounds really interesting. How did you what does that consist of?
Yeah, I think that's giving me way too much credit. I was invited they needed to get some real world data and do some data logging. So it was myself, 2 engineers, a photographer, and I think one other person showed up at some point, but we literally rented out a mountain for the weekend, and there was no one else but us. And
like a resort type of mountain, or
well, it was Plattekill in upstate New York, so a tiny little bike park that was heavily involved in racing, but not so much in just lift service riding.
Okay, so you could just rent it out, then it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, and so they have some of the gnarliest terrain I've ever ridden, which was perfect for this.
Yeah.
So they had 2 versions of the bike. They had a 29er version and a 27.5 version. So myself and one of the engineers, we did a bunch of laps back to back, just kind of getting some data, some feedback, testing it compared to the old version of the bike, just to get some kind of baseline testing. And it was really fascinating. I'd never done that before, and it was super cool to work with engineers and give them some feedback. But aside from that, that was I didn't actually do anything beyond that.
That's pretty cool. That's still pretty neat. What's it like working with a photographer, like a professional photographer like that? I know whenever I'm out filming and I'm walking up and down the hills a million times, I'm like, man, I wish I had somebody else pushing this button.
It's funny. I find when people are taking videos or photos of me that I'm riding worse.
Oh, really?
I always look really stiff because it's like someone telling you to act normal.
Yeah.
You try to act normal and you're acting normal, so you're not acting normal. And for photos, and video, you just want to ride relaxed because that looks best on camera. So it can be challenging.
Yeah. And then the weather itself too can be challenging. It's especially over there in the East Coast, where you live, it's it could rain any day. Out here in California, we know for the most part it's gonna be sunny every day from May till October,
Yeah, I mean, the photos I think may have just been a little bit more for internal purposes, but if they decided they wanted to use some of it for marketing purposes down the road, they wanted to make sure they had good photos.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine that you've worked with a photographer in other instances, or is that the only time?
No, I've done some more, but I've never really done a photo, a huge photo shoot. It's funny. I don't really have that many great riding photos. The photos I do have were from when I was racing. There's always photographers on the sides of the course taking photos. And, once you get to know them, they will generally send you some of their photos, as long as you're not using it for advertising purposes. So if you put on your Instagram account, they're totally cool with that. But now if your sponsor takes that photo and then they plaster it on some billboard at Whistler, then the sponsor and the photographer need to come up with a deal.
Yeah. What you mentioned racing. I think the last time we talked, you were kind of like pretty much thinking you're totally done. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I've raced 1 or 2 races since, but I've essentially stopped racing.
Yeah. What does that make you feel good, or does it make you kind of like you miss it sometimes? I sold a motorcycle that I used to have a few years back, and I get that itch, it comes up like, man, I wish I could still be riding that thing. But on the other hand, I'm like, I'm glad I got rid of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 parts of me. There's this weird thing I think a lot of competitive riders go through when you don't have race results to back up. Like a lot of your self-worth is based on race results. It kind of tells you like how you stack up against other riders in the world. And it's kind of shallow, but did I go away?
No, it's me. I'm just messing with the camera.
Kind of a shallow way to look at it, but a lot of your self-worth is based off those results. So if you're doing well, you feel real good, but also when you're not doing well, you feel like crap. So removing yourself away from racing, it's hard to just feel like a normal racer or a normal person, because you're always like questioning yourself, like, how do I stack up against that guy who's winning?
Yeah.
It's I don't know how many people can relate to that, but I've been a very competitive person since I was a young kid. So removing that competitiveness has been good and bad, because I hated the stress associated with racing. And so getting that away has been awesome, just being able to go ride and have fun. But there's a part of you that always like wants to know, like, how good are you? Are you washed up, or are you still pretty good?
Yeah, you definitely are probably wondering, like where you stand. Do you use something like Strava or anything like that to just kind of see how you are? No, you don't.
No, I do. I like Strava for like recording like where you've ridden, like just to like pass that information on to friends or whatever.
Yeah.
But I personally don't use it to record rides at all. I hate having the slight urge to like really push hard on like even an unofficial race.
Yeah. I was a late adopter to it, and for me it was always like, I don't really care about how I stack up to the rest of the world, is care how I stack up to my friends. And after I realized like it like also just like would catch those segments of the trail, then I was kind of like, well, this is cool. I can like at least look back and see like, man, I thought I was flying today, and then look at the time and be like, oh no, I wasn't, or vice versa, but then also like just to put like jab at your buddy, where you're like, dude, I beat you on a hardtail, or something like that. It's cool. But I think it has some pluses and some minuses. I agree with you there for sure. It's definitely it can have its bad side, where it's like causing people to try to run people over and just be ridiculous,
It's definitely, I don't know if this is actually true, but like a lot of the shortcuts I've seen on trails, a lot of us like kind of associate with being Strava lines, where the trail used to make this awkward turn and someone would like cut out the inside, and so as you're riding it, the awkward outside line was actually pretty fun, but then the new faster line gets burnt in.
Yeah, totally. I hear what you're saying there for sure. And sometimes that's not a good thing, because they're not really set up to like for erosion and stuff like that to just get all funky.
Yeah, most of these trails are just like not quite as built up, so it doesn't make as big of a difference. But
gotcha.
Like, if you've been riding the trail for a long time, it's kind of a bummer to see all of a sudden your trail change on you.
Yeah, no, totally. There's a few trails around my local area that somebody like decided they were going to fix, quote unquote, and in my opinion, they didn't make it any better, So it's like, man, I really liked that section. That was really hard, because it was like gave me something to keep trying for. I only nailed it like 7 out of 10 times, so I want, there was always gave you something to think about. So you were talking about that, that competitiveness in you. Did you notice that whenever you started doing your YouTube too? Did you kind of get sucked into it that way, or?
Yes and no. I mean, there's always the part of you that wants to like be the best.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like, what does that mean in terms of YouTube?
Yeah.
Like it. So what I've ultimately come down to is like, I just want to make content that makes me happy.
Yeah.
And, so I've tried to, I haven't completely lost competitiveness, but I try to put that aside as much as possible.
Yeah. It's hard not to, look at, I feel like it's like what do they call that? I'm drawing a blank on the word, right? It's like the little endorphins that get released when you're happy or whatever. And it's like you get on and you're looking at your subscriber account and comments that make you feel good, and it gets addictive, so then I know for a fact for myself, I had to take a step back at one point because I was like, man, I'm like really comparing myself to other people in a way that's not healthy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I've actually gone ahead and like I try not to look at analytics as much anymore. Which is good and bad. You want to look at analytics because it's telling you if what you're doing is working or if there's some glaring error that you're doing wrong. But at the same time, your self-worth kind of suffers.
Yeah,
Or
totally.
it can. And then you start comparing yourself to somebody else who's doing really well, and you're like, well, like, why am I not doing well or something?
Yeah.
I try not to look at numbers as much as possible, but at the end of the day, it is kind of part of the job. So
yeah, I mean, it definitely tells you some things. I mean, you'll know it if your thumbnail's all screwed up and you change it, and all of a sudden the views start going up. You're like, oh, okay, well,
yeah, I mean,
obviously.
it's funny. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, go for it, man.
This winter, I was like, all right, I'm gonna try something completely different. I'll put up some snowboarding videos. I haven't snowboarded in a while. I don't have a fat bike, and let's see how these kinds of videos resonate, because there's a lot of crossover between mountain biking and skiers and snowboarders.
Yeah, for sure. I think most
And
of us that mountain bike, ski, or snowboard too.
yeah, and so like the first video I put out did really well. Well, I mean, did pretty well. Like as far as like I was concerned, like within like 2 weeks, it had like 90,000 views.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, like this is doing pretty well. And then
Right.
I put up the next video, and after 24 hours, it had like 5,000 views. I'm like, whoa, this is like not like. Is my like video not being like shared to all my subscribers? What's going on here?
Yeah. You're like, something's wrong.
I thought that video was like way better. But whatever. So that was telling me like that people just don't care about skills with fill and snow. So lesson learned.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard. What you just said a second ago is like, you're like, man, I thought that one was better. And sometimes I think that's one of the harder parts about doing YouTube is taking your own personal feelings out of it. You're like, man, I'm really invested in this video. It's going to be so great. And then for whatever reason, people don't. And then it's like, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah. I still did a few more videos just because it made me happy. And I think the last video, I had Haley in quite a bit. And it was like, we just watched that the other day, and just watching it back was a good trip down memory lane for us.
Yeah.
So
I enjoy that part. I'm not gonna lie. I watch a lot of my old videos. I'll be like having a few beers here and there, and I'll be out here in the garage. I'm like, no, I want to watch that one again. It was fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I saw you were talking about doing the snow sports on one of your videos, and you said you were doing like bouldering too. So you got into climbing as well?
Yeah. So when I was in college, which wasn't that long ago, I took one of like you have to take a physical education kind of class. So I took rock climbing, and so I got into it a little bit.
You can take rock climbing in college.
Exactly. I was like, that cool. Turns out it was more about tying knots than actually climbing a wall.
Great.
But no, it was kind of gave me a taste for something that I had wanted to know more about. And after that, I started going to like a few bouldering gyms like once every month, but like that's not enough to let your hands develop the calluses that you need to climb or to strength. So that stopped. And then last winter, not this winter, but the last winter, Haley and I just got a regular gym membership, and that was fine. It's better than nothing. But we didn't snowboard or ski that winter because it's really expensive. And we just got really, really bored. So this summer or this winter, we're like, all right, let's actually, make sure we stay occupied, do something physical that makes us happy. And so we got into bouldering, and turns out a bunch of other mountain bikers have the same kind of idea. And it was a fun little, like, it's kind of like sessioning dirt jumps. You show up, you watch your friends like struggle on what they call a problem, which is it's there's a start point and an end point, and the route you take to get to the end point is called a problem. Because
we should probably explain what bouldering is for people that don't know, right?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
You want to go ahead, because I'm gonna be shooting from the hip on it.
Yeah, so most people, when they think of like indoor rock climbing gyms, they think of like a rock wall that's about like 60 feet high. You're harnessed in, and you have like those colorful little handholds or footholds that you use to scale to the top. Some parts of the wall may be a little bit more like inverted. Some parts of the wall for the easier climbs are a little bit more pitched like that. So it's more or less just like, climbing a ladder. But bouldering is usually you're not going any more than like 15 feet off the ground, and there's pads all over the place. So if you fall, you're probably not going to get hurt unless you fall really awkwardly.
Right.
And it's more technical climbing that you really have to think your way through, because there's the person who makes a route or a problem has made that with the intention that this hold right here is meant for this hand, and that comes after you use this foot movement over here. And so it's a lot of thinking your way through a problem or a like obstacle course logically.
Yeah. And while you're hanging on by your fingers, right?
Yeah. That's a hard one for me.
Right? Yeah, I would imagine. That's like definitely sure a good exercise, that's for sure.
And then there's like different types of like bouldering too.
There's
there's like, once you get into like, there's climbing that like requires like really like tiny little holds, and like it's really like crimpy, which I never was good at. I was good at like if there's either really big handles or something else called slab bouldering or climbing, which is more or less like there's not necessarily a handhold. It's just like an angled piece of rock wall that like you can push off of another piece of the rock wall. And if you apply just the right amount of pressure in like different locations, you can hold yourself up. The way I would explain it is like watching someone hold themselves up in a doorway.
Yeah, like when you're a kid or something like that.
Yeah, it's more like that, where you're not necessarily pulling, you're like pushing, and a lot more balance related. I like that.
Right on, dude. What I also saw in that video, you were standing on a slack line, dude. What got you into that?
Well, so when like a lot of bouldering places like will have other things beyond just the bouldering gyms, like climbing walls. They had a slack line right behind where you would like wait your turn. And so like as my arms were throbbing from trying to do like a problem a million times, I would go over and try to do a slack line, which is basically a tightrope. And I had tried one a while ago and never really got the feeling for it. But since I spent so much time in the gym, like the first few days there, like I couldn't do it at all. After the first week, I kind of got like a few feet, but it was like my like body was shaking, like because my like stabilizing muscles hadn't developed yet. My sense of balance just wasn't there yet. I knew like what to do. It's just your body is like trying to like, figure out how to do it. And then after like 2 or 3 weeks, I was kind of able to like walk all the way across the slack line. And
that's crazy. It's so crazy to me, man. Every time I look at one of those, I'm like, I don't even know how you get to that point.
It's one of those things where like a lot of times like they'll have like handholds to help you balance. And I think like throw those away, just start from the tree or whatever the post is, and just really pay attention to make subtle small movements and just like put one step, and like, you know, if you can do 3 steps, that's awesome, but like just work on doing what you can and doing it well, and eventually you'll get better as you get into the middle of like there's a post here and a post here and the lines here. The middle of the slack line is the hardest part because that's where it's going to sway the most.
Right.
So once you can get to the middle, you can probably get all the way across.
Have you ever done it like higher and higher? Like, does that like up the ante, or do they just kind of keep it usually low to the ground?
They keep it on the ground. I'm not interested in like doing anything too crazy. I was just like, it's a really good core workout.
Yeah, I can imagine that for sure. Dude, do you like documentaries?
I do.
I love documentaries, man. And there's this one about this guy that's a tightrope walker.
I think I know what documentary you're about to
Man on the Wire. Oh my God, it's like watching a freaking bank robbery. For those of you guys that don't know what I'm talking about, this guy basically is a tightrope walker, and he just decides to like go do it places where it's illegal. So he like does it on Notre Dame in Paris, and like some other famous bridge down in like Australia. And then he decides somewhere along the line that he wants to do it in between the World Trade Towers, and they're still being built. So him and his buddies are like dressing up like UPS guys and all this stuff, like trying to sneak their gear in. And like, it's just really fun to watch. But to think about somebody standing on a freaking wire like that high in the air is just like, oh my God, it made me like just get all like weird inside just watching the dude.
Yeah, that movie was awesome. Like, it's kind of like Ocean's 11 meets documentaries.
Yeah. I think they did a movie too. And when I watched the movie, I didn't like it as much as the documentary. I thought the documentary was more fun because it was like the actual guy, and he's got that like French accent, and just like it's kind of quirky the way it's filmed. And I don't know, I really liked it.
I guess I didn't know they made a movie out of it. I just knew about the documentary.
Yeah. It was like a few years. I think the documentary did so well that they decided, to do that, right? So I was joking around with somebody just the other day. Did you watch the Tiger King thing?
I did.
Yeah, somebody was saying, oh, they're making a movie. And I'm like, why would you possibly make a movie about something that everybody already knows, like the story? Like, what's the point? Like, it doesn't even make any sense, but that's Hollywood, right?
I mean, it's like all the documentaries right now, like after they're done, they do that follow-up, like, where are they now kind of video.
Yeah. Yeah, they did something similar to that too. They added an episode on that Tiger King thing. What is there any other documentary that pops out to you that you could think of that's like, man, that one's my favorite?
In current events, I'm not a basketball fan at all, but I watched the Michael Jordan one, The Last Dance.
Yeah, I keep hearing about this. I really want to check it out. What was it that you liked?
I don't know. I guess I was born in 1990, so I guess I was 8 when that whole thing happened. And like, so as a kid, like my thoughts weren't that lucid. Like I just like, like Space Jam, woohoo. And I didn't really know much about Michael Jordan beyond or the team beyond what you would hear in the news. Like I didn't really care about basketball, so I knew very little. So to me, like, even learning about Dennis Rodman, who's like this, I've always known him as this crazy kind of person, and kind of learning a little bit more, like he's still kind of crazy, but there was a little bit of method to his madness, and that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, those stories are pretty interesting, man. I like those as well. There's been a few that I watched on some musicians that you're like, oh wow, man, that really like kind of shed some light on it,
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I'm always a little skeptical of with documentaries is like, who is funding, or who's a production company behind the the documentary. I know for The Last Dance, I know Michael Jordan's company was somewhat involved with that. So you're like, all right, I've heard some not nice things about him, but this movie did a pretty good job painting him in a real good light. So I always try to like take it with a grain of salt.
That's one of those things I learned in college that I think was really valuable. Probably one of the most valuable things I learned in college was that, like, looking at things from that perspective and thinking about like who paid for this, or like tearing apart the argument in your mind before you just accept it. I feel like a lot of people don't do that. Like, I was making that joke earlier about putting a picture on Facebook, and unfortunately, like, that's a proof of what I'm talking about, where people just buy whatever image they see. They're like, oh, okay, cool, I believe it, and then they base their life around it. It's like, what the hell, man? Mm-hmm. So that's crazy. So you said that the rock climbing was essentially just tying knots, the class that you took in college.
Yeah, the teacher that we had, awesome person, but it focused a little bit less on the actual technique of rock climbing and more about getting you prepared to go on a rock climbing adventure. And I think most people in the class would have just been happy with, hey, I want to climb this wall a few times and get better at climbing a wall, versus knowing the things that come way down the line when you're ready to go, go up, like whatever the one in California that I can't think of, but it's on the background of my desktop.
You know what? If I would have cut you off in the middle of your sentence, I would have said it. El Capitan?
Yes.
I'm glad it came back to me. Otherwise, I was going to feel like a complete idiot, right?
Thank you for saving me.
And there's another one there too that people climb Half Dome as well. So, but anyways, the reason I was asking you about that is because the comments were blowing up earlier, and I saw it on your channel as well. You did a little different kind of knot tying not too recently. You tied the knot with the lady, huh?
Yeah, that happened on January 2nd.
Right on, man. Congratulations to both of you guys.
Thank you.
You guys have been together for a while now, huh?
Yep. So I met Haley while we were in college. I started school when I was 24. I went back when I was a little bit older. And so she was an upperclassman to me, but age-wise, I was older. But so we started dating, but once she graduated, and I graduated, we moved in together after that. And but all throughout college, like, it was it just felt right. I've never felt a relationship that like just felt more natural. Like, so yeah, it was awesome.
Right on, man. You guys always look like you have good chemistry together on the camera. So I'm sure you can fix that in the edit, but
I mean, like, as with anything, like, there are times where you step on each other's toes, but like, we don't yell at each other. We're usually pretty like, all right, we need some space and move, like, come back, talk about it. And a few relationships before that, I was in a really like bad relationship. Not so much in terms of yelling, but I didn't realize I was in a very manipulative kind of relationship.
Yeah, usually when you're in one of those, you don't know it until after you're out of it. You're like, oh my God, how did I not realize what was going on?
Yeah, and so that I didn't realize, but kind of gave me some PTSD moving forward into like future relationships.
Uh-huh.
And so I know with Haley, I was always like, kind of, is she playing games with me here, when she was just honestly being straight up front, and I just wasn't used to that. That was like, oh no, she's real.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing with my lady. Like, she's not the type of person that says go and she doesn't want you to go. So it's like I'd ask to go somewhere. Hey, mind if I do this with my buddies? And she'd be like, yeah, go for it. And I'd be like, so does she really want me to go? Or you know what I mean? Like, it took a while to be like, no, that she would tell me if she didn't feel comfortable with it. You know what I mean? So that's definitely a plus to have that kind of relationship. So you said on the video, you guys just did like a no ceremony kind of thing, went down to the courthouse or something.
Yeah. So no one ever teaches you like what the steps are to get married. It's just something that like
It's probably on it somewhere, right?
I mean, getting married without a ceremony is kind of harder because I'm not religiously affiliated with any, church or anything. So I can't like just walk across the street to one of the churches and be like, hey, can you just kind of marry us right now? Like, and so they're like just trying to figure out what you need to do an informal wedding or like marriage was pretty interesting. Like no one ever explains that. Like, hey, that's an option. You go down to the courthouse, you get the application or whatever it was called, and then you find in I think in Vermont it's Minister of the Peace or something like that.
Yeah, it's familiar. I've heard that before.
And there's one who in the Burlington area who kind of does a little bit more unofficial or less kind of normal ceremonies that we contacted with. And, we met at like a pancake place. So we went out back to where there's a nice little tree place. And, I don't cry very often. I don't really get like emotional, but like when she was actually reading our vows, like I got very teary eyed, and like it's hard like when you're not used to that. So it was especially when you're looking at your future wife's eyes, and like it was way more special of a moment than I ever anticipated it being.
That's awesome, man. I mean, it shows you really love her, dude. You know what I mean? Like that's important, and I think that's really, really cool that you shared that with us, because that was probably a very special moment for you,
It's I try to keep, it's hard to find the right balance of like sharing your personal life and keeping people involved in like things that matter on the channel. So to me, like this is one of them that it's like it's pretty personal, but I also like, if this is going to be on my finger, like in the video, people are going to be wondering.
Yeah. There's a bunch of people in the comments at the beginning were like, "What's that? What is that? A wedding band on his finger?" They're all freaking out and stuff. So, yeah. No, I'm sure that's a pretty big challenge of like how much you share. I'm definitely like a open book kind of guy, and sometimes I have to tell myself like, "Wait a minute, dude! Like this is out there for the whole world, and like it's gonna be there forever." So, like, maybe you should really consider what you're saying.
It was also weird because like growing up, like I was like wondering like, how do you know when you're ready? Like, when is the right moment? And it just feels right.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain, but it just feels right.
Were you guys engaged very long, or?
We didn't get engaged.
Just we're like, hey, it's time. Let's go down here and do this.
Yeah, we're pretty like matter of fact. Like when something makes sense to happen, like for something to happen, we're like, we'll go do it.
It's really cool. Did you guys do any kind of honeymoon or anything like that, or?
No, I mean, I think we spent a little extra at the pancake place.
The big brunch, man. That's awesome, man. I'm super stoked for you guys. That's really cool, and I wish you guys the best, man, for sure.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So your channel's getting pretty big now. I see that sign you got out there on the wall behind you. Is that that's the 100,000 button back there?
Sorry, you got a little burp going on. It's funny. Like anyone who's on YouTube for long enough, you'll see your channel go up and down, or go up at different rates. And I feel my channel really it grew really quickly at first, and then it kind of plateaued. And I think I've been riding a slower plateau of it's been growing, but not as fast as it was at one point.
Yeah. What was the point where you felt like you started plateauing? What number?
I would say 200,000.
Somewhere around registers.
Yeah. I think, part of it was at one point I was doing 2 videos a week. I was doing a kind of a skills related video plus a riding video, the Thrills with Phil stuff. And like, I saw my channel just blow up in terms of numbers. It was just like, like I think 1 month I got close to 15,000 subscribers in 1 month, and like back then that was huge.
Yeah,
I mean that's still huge.
Yeah, no, totally. I'd like to get 15,000 subscribers, period.
It's funny, like the thing about growing is you start to the people who were with you from the beginning start to be drowned out by the people who just discovered your channel, and so your audience changes.
Yeah, I've heard Seth talk about that before, where he's like, super fun when you have 5, 10, 15,000 people, like it's real easy to have like almost relationships, like conversations with these people, who they all are. And it's like, once it hits a certain number, it's like so many comments on there. You can't even you're like, I don't know who any of these people are.
Yeah. And then like some people like really start, then the negative comments come in, and like, depending on your mood, no matter how many positive comments you get,
Yeah.
one negative comment will always go for the jugular.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, or maybe it's something like that. Like it seems kind of innocent, and for a while I was really, I've always had a weird speech pattern, speech impediment, and like I'm very self-aware of that. And then when people like to bring that up, you're like, you think to yourself like, man, like, do I really sound that bad? Like even like as you're trying to like work on it and enunciate, and it's just one of those things where if you have any kind of insecurities, it will bring that out.
Yeah, they sure will. I remember we talked about that last time. Was it just I can't remember, did you have some kind of hearing loss or something when you were younger, or it was just like a speech impediment? And
yeah, I had a speech impediment, but I also lived in France for 5 years, from when I was like 9 to 14 years old. So I never lost the speech impediment per se. I maybe slowly started to grow off it, and I'm not even sure if it's technically an impediment. It's in speech. I couldn't say my R's.
You'd be failing at being a pirate, man.
Yeah. Ow. And when I lived in France, I learned to speak French fluently, and that's why I spoke on a daily basis at school and whatnot. And I don't know if when I came back, I just had a French accent, which it could have been because I was literally speaking to the point where no one could tell I was American.
Right.
But when I came back, I spoke really fast and I spoke kind of funny, so a lot of people could not understand me.
Yeah. That's lame, and people are like, they're just their own insecurities. I guess that's why they got to do that kind of stuff. Because I
mean, it's high school and middle school. Like you can, I think I've heard it's gotten better. Like people are a little bit more accepting, but kids are kids. Like there's only so much.
Comments on any post on the internet. It's like obviously there's still a bunch of people that haven't grown the fuck up yet, right?
Yes, that's one thing you realize as an adult. People don't necessarily become more of an adult; they just become older.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that the truth? That's just hilarious. Oh man. So I was asking you about GT earlier, and how is it that you went about getting a sponsor with YouTube that would differ from how you would go about getting a sponsor as a pro rider?
Yeah, that was weird for me. I felt like because I was a professional racer, and I always have to like explain when I race professionally, I never made any money except for what I made for getting on the podium or whatever. Like you'd get like the most I ever won was like $1,000, which at the time a lot of money. But in the big picture, how much you spend to get that $1,000, it's you'd be lucky to break even.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, when I was racing, I never got paid. At one point I got a free bike, a complete bike, which was pretty sick. So free parts were what I considered sponsorship.
Right.
And I don't these days I don't consider, especially on social media and YouTube, that is not sponsorship. That is maybe product support, product flow. But I think it's really important to explain sponsors are people who actually not only support you with a product that they want you to represent, but
help you pay your bills.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, yeah.
And so I've had to be really careful with the terminology I use because I want to explain, like, you know, if I get something for free, that's not a sponsor.
Yeah.
But I'll also explain that if I bring attention, I got that product for free and it can skew my views. Anyway, that's a slight tangent.
No, totally. I think that, you know, a lot of guys that are starting on YouTube, like they'll throw the word sponsorship around a lot easier because they want it to sound like they're like maybe being more successful. Yeah, right. So it feels good, you know.
Yeah. Growing up, like being sponsored was like the coolest thing ever. And now that I'm in this situation, I'm like, you know, there's something cool about being, you know, sometimes buying things on your own and having no strings attached.
Yeah. I don't care how indifferent you try to be on your channel. Like when you do have something for free, like you do have it does give you a bias, whether or not it's one that really changes your opinion. It does give you a bias. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I try not to focus too much about talking about products on my channel. I know I do talk about products, but a lot of the products I do talk are about I talk about companies that I would use when I wasn't sponsored by those companies. But since you're now sponsored by those companies and you actually do believe in them, it's hard for you to not be like aware of the conflict of interest. And so a lot of times I sound very robotic if I talk about products. And so it's something I hate doing. But it's also part of the job because like there's some really cool stuff that's going on. You know, Onyx, that's a new sponsor for me this year. They were I ran their hubs because they came on the Noble wheels, and they were truly one of the coolest things ever because they would make the video sound amazing because you'd actually hear the like tires hitting the dirt. But not only that, the engagement was like nothing I've ever felt before. But unless you try it for yourself, it's hard to explain how that feels.
Yeah, totally. And I think, you know, another thing with sponsorship is that you get to know the company very well. So like you'll understand what some of the reasons are behind the decisions that were made, or like somebody's like, oh, I don't like that company because every time I try to order them, they're sold out. And you're like, oh, well, it's because this one supplier that they have in, you know, Indonesia that like their factory burned down, you know? And it's like, and to them, they're like, I don't give a shit about that. Dude, I wanted to buy that thing and it's not there, you know?
So going back to your point about how has it changed? I found going from getting sponsors as a professional rider to a, I guess, YouTuber. It's been it was very challenging for me because it's hard to determine what your self-worth is. When I was racing, I was stoked if I got something for free.
Right.
Because a lot of times companies were like, oh, here's a 30% discount. It's like, great. So now I'm like buying into a club membership. Like, is this part of like some multi-level marketing, you know?
Yeah. I've talked to some other people about that before with some of the bike companies where they're like, hey, we'll give you this sponsorship. And then you're like, wait a minute. So you want me to pay for the bike and then you want me to market for your company? Yeah. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. If I have one piece of advice for kids looking for sponsorship, go through your local bike shop. Your local bike shop, if you have something of value to give to them, they will have, you know, they might be a distributor for multiple bike companies, multiple brands of like handlebars components. And so you're not necessarily tied into one particular company. They have a bunch of products in their store. And so it's a little bit more freeing. And, you know, supporting a local bike shop is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, with those local shops, I mean, they're having to do more and more to stand out than they did in the past. So there's probably a lot more opportunity there as well.
Yeah. And it's also hard, like, because if you think of it, it's like for a local bike shop in, you know, Bakersville, California wanted to sponsor me, how much is that actually going to help them? Like
Yeah.
my friends in Vermont aren't going to go drive across the country to California to buy tube.
Right. Yeah. I've thought about that with this podcast, where I'm like, oh, I could probably talk to some like local brewers around here and maybe get them to sponsor some shows. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, how many people are they really going to be able to touch that are going to be able to buy their beer? Like, I feel like, well, maybe that's not fair. I'm not gonna bother,
Yeah.
When I got people listening all over the US and it's like, here's something that sells in Sacramento. It's like, well, that's not really helping them out much,
So I think for me, the biggest thing was I worked with an agent that Paul Punter, like he was agent for a few of us, and he had worked at Pink Bike and kind of understood the landscape a little bit better than I did, like how much pro riders got paid and what the value of a view or 100 views were, and all those things. And so working with him that 1 year really helped kind of give me like a sense of self-worth. Like this is what to expect. And that helped like bring more structure to what I do, but it made me like be able to support and actually do this full time.
Yeah, and I think there's a big thing. It's like socially, it's not really acceptable to ask somebody like, "How much you make?" And maybe with some of your good friends, you can like say, "Well, would you get on this or would you get on that?" And sometimes maybe you're signing something that says you're not allowed to talk about it. So it's like, I feel like a lot of people in this space, you're left to just kind of figure it out on your own, and then you find out like, hey, this person made this much money, and you're like, holy cow, I didn't even know that was an option, like. So I think Paul's a good guy. I saw him on the chat earlier. I think he's helped out a handful of people that way, and I think the same thing goes also with the pro riders and stuff like that. It's like one guy might be getting a free bike and thinking that's what the deal is, and somebody else is like getting a big chunk of change.
Yeah,
and they're both doing the same thing.
I mean, I think when I was racing growing up as a kid riding, I thought like all the pro athletes who are winning in the pro category, I thought they were like, rolling in money or whatever. Maybe not, that's not the right term, but they were well supported. Well, it turns out that they had a landscaping job during the week. So
it's like some of those things like with actors too, man. I remember seeing like I remember when American Pie came out, was that like were you too young?
No, oddly enough, it was my generation, but I know of it. I just never watched it.
Yeah. So anyways, that movie came out. It was like huge, right? It was a big hit. Like everybody had seen it. And the one guy that plays like Stifler on the show, right? Or on the movie is like, you would think, I mean, he was in this major movie. He must freaking have like bank. And then I remember he was on like MTV Cribs, and it was like, dude had an apartment like I did. It was like, obviously he's not freaking like making that kind of money, or he wouldn't be living there with a roommate.
Well, funny enough, I just saw something on Reddit. I think it was it Method Man? It was some hip hop artist who did a thing on MTV Cribs, and he just had a regular apartment. Like it was messy, unkept. But the thing that like came out in the comments is a lot of those I want to say MTV Cribs. They actually wanted the people to rent out an ultra like luxurious villa or whatever for the episode. So I think like that happened with like Ja Rule, the Ying Yang twins and whatnot.
They're just like fronting it, huh?
Yeah, they're literally walking around a place that they've never been in before. Like, this is my refrigerator. Let's see what's in here, because I don't know.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of the image, though, right?
I mean, it kind of sucks because like that. I don't know. I don't think that's a good image to like like 50 Cent, I think turns out he was renting his fleet of Ferraris or something. Like do we really want to like tell like kids that like you need to have a bunch of cars that you never use to be successful? Like,
what is it really doing? It's kind of crazy. But I don't know. I guess maybe if you're in that situation, maybe you understand it more. I don't know. From my perspective, I'm like, I always thought like if I was the person that made a bunch of money like that, I'd still live pretty modestly. But
I mean, who knows? I will say, like, I was a kid, I watched MTV Cribs, and you would always be kind of like disappointed when like someone would come on and they would have like a weak house. But now that I'm older, I'm like, yeah, you live that modest life. Like,
right?
like to me, that's cool. Like when someone who has the means to buy like the nicest thing just drives a Honda.
Yeah, I feel like just be happy. So like, I'm not a person that really needs super material things to be happy. So like life experience is more like exciting to me. So if I had, boatloads of money, it wouldn't be buy a bigger house. It would be like go other places and travel more. You know what I mean? Like, experience my life more instead of like having bigger bills to pay.
I definitely agree with that.
I think last time we talked, you were still not sure about where you were going to settle down. Have you guys like pinpointed that or?
Yeah. I'm not gonna let the cat out of the bag.
Oh no! Came on a little secret there. Almost got the gem on the Biker Bar podcast.
But yeah. So we're pretty certain we're gonna be in this area.
Oh, right on, dude. Well, that's exciting, man.
There's definitely a period where I think like a lot of people who watch my videos don't know where I live. Like a lot of people are surprised that I live in Vermont.
Mm-hmm. And that's the area that you're from too, right? Like you were up there for a long time.
I, for the most part, especially when I started the channel, I was in Keene, New Hampshire, which is, Keene is like this forgotten southern west city of like 25,000 people in the southern west part of the state. Most people who go to New Hampshire will never go there because they're going to a different part of New Hampshire.
Right, they're just driving through.
Yeah, and so it's more closely related to Vermont than it is New Hampshire, in my opinion. But it's still New Hampshire. It's got some Massachusetts kind of qualities to it as well. And so I that's where I went to high school, and when I was done with that, like I'd spent like some time on and off in Connecticut throughout my whole life, some time in California throughout my whole life. But after I graduated from high school and I was racing and whatnot, and then after a while, I figured out I should probably go back to school for something that's a little bit more, reliable than racing. And so I went to school in Western North Carolina. And this is before Seth had moved to Asheville and whatnot. He was still living in Florida at the time.
Right.
And so I spent some time over there, loved it. It was awesome. And I could definitely see myself getting back to that area. But when I got back to New England and moved in with Haley in this area of Vermont, it just really grew on me. There's something, I don't know how to explain it, but when something feels right, it just feels right. And this is one of those places.
I'm from Pennsylvania originally, and one of the things I miss about back east, like that area, New England, I guess you could say. I don't know if you count Pennsylvania and New England state, but close enough. Like the four seasons are awesome, man. You get like, you know what I mean? Like you get all four of them. And so like fall is beautiful with all the leaves, and then like having some snow on the ground, it's fun, especially as a kid going out and like sledding and stuff like that. And then spring comes around, you're like finally like able to get outside, and summer is hot as hell with all the humidity. And so you're like in the creeks and the pool or whatever, just having a good time. It's definitely fun in my memory. I can understand why you would feel the way you do.
Yeah. You know what? I will also say that since moving from, so Keene was like essentially 2 hours south of where I am. And the difference between the 2 hours in terms of like how winter is huge. Like here, there's actually like a lot of snow. not compared to Colorado, but a lot of snow for the Northeast.
Yeah.
There's a reason why people come to Vermont to go skiing.
Yeah, totally.
And I enjoyed it more when there was more snow on the ground because it felt more like winter. When you have the cold, but not the snow, winter sucks.
Yeah, totally.
Because you're going skiing on ice. If you do go skiing, like your trails are frozen. So like it's, I don't know, bundling up to go fat biking is only so much fun.
Right.
So I've definitely come to enjoy this area because like it has a legit winter and you can do things.
What do you like most about the train there as far as riding goes?
This sounds very nerdy around the dirt.
Yeah.
There's something very, especially so Vermont geographically has a few different types of geographic regions. And where you are, I don't know the names of any of it. I just know when you go there, the terrain is much different. So, in some areas you have more granite rock, which is that stuff is, really dense. It doesn't break up. But then you go to other areas of Vermont has more of a shale rock that breaks up very easily. And then other areas, it's close to Lake Champlain, which has really fine silt soil, and it's so it makes for a really nice trail surface.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so there's a lot of different areas that you can go to, and they all have different kinds of riding. But the other thing that about Vermont is like it's all pretty small. Like it's not really, people like flock to Kingdom Trails. Kingdom Trails, in my opinion, like is a great place to go as a family, but as a rider, it kind of bores me. Like it's not my favorite place to go. I still think it's a great place and it's doing a lot of good things. It's just there's so many other things in Vermont that I would prefer to ride.
That's like a bike park, Kingdom Trails.
It's complicated. It's so Kingdom Trails is disregarding the fact that they're going through some issues right now. Kingdom Trails is a series of trails built on people's private property that have given them access to use their trails. And that's very typical for a lot of Vermont, except in Kingdom Trails, you have to buy a pass to ride those trails. But there's different zones, like there's different parts of the towns that you can ride. And then there's Burke Mountain, which is a ski resort, but it also has lift service mountain biking, and that's where the EWS was supposed to take place this year. And that has legit gnarly terrain.
Yeah, I'm sure if EWS was going to be there.
Yeah, and like that's kind of part. Like, that's part of Kingdom Trail area, but that itself up on Burke Mountain, I don't think is part of Kingdom Trails, but I don't know enough to really say that with confidence.
So is that your favorite place to ride, or you like some other stuff around there instead? Like if I was coming to visit, where would you take me?
So the place right now that's blowing up and doing really well is the whole area of Chittenden County / Washington County. So that encompasses I would take you to a bunch of different places because there's so many places all within 30 minutes of each other. So you'd have to spend multiple days, and we'd go wide Perry Hill and Waterbury. We'd ride Katy Hill in Stowe. We would then head up on Ben and Jerry's on our way back. We'd go to Cochran's, which is a nonprofit ski resort that offers. Have you heard of Untapped? You've probably seen them in the bike stores. Untapped like goo, and they do like
I think I've seen that before.
Yeah, that's literally right down the road from me.
Right on.
And they so as you're riding up Cochran's, you're literally ducking under the sap lines, which collect the sap to make those products.
Oh, that's neat. That's really cool.
That stuff is used to put back into the trails and whatnot. But anyway, so definitely Cochran's, and then there are a few other places scattered around the area that are worth visiting. But there's also a kind of thing in Vermont where you kind of have to spend some time to get to know the area. There's not necessarily one iconic destination, because a
What's
lot of
the
times,
riding like there? Is it like out here in California, we have these like grinder climbs and then a big downhill. You know what I mean? We don't usually have, we have some that are like up and down, but most of our trails are like that. You know, it's like big climb and big descent, you know?
so most trails are all single track climbs. So very rarely are you taking a fire road or double track up the hill. You might use it for like a short little bit, but that will just get you across this one section, and then you'll jump into the woods. And so a lot of the climbs are meandering, but also kind of technical because we have plenty of rocks and plenty of roots. And depending on the trail conditions, that can be easy on like a dry day or really hard on like a slightly moist day.
Yeah, I remember riding back in Pennsylvania when I was younger. It was like super rooty and just a lot of like just rock baby head kind of stuff sticking out all over the place.
Yeah. And so I would say we don't necessarily have huge elevation gains and huge elevation drops, nothing super steep, but the quality of the dirt that you're riding on,
Super fun.
Again, it's something that like there's lots of loam, and again, it's very silty soil, so it's very pleasant on your hands.
Yeah. Outside of home, where's your favorite place to ride?
So, I mean, I do go to bike parks a lot. So Highland Mountain, we have lots of bike parks in the area that we can go to.
I mean, like geographically, like, would you say like Sedona or when I went to New Zealand, or, you know what I mean? Like, Whistler, you know,
there's definitely something about Whistler and like the greater area of British Columbia. That's like, you go out there and it's like, whoa, like these mountains are not like messing around.
Right.
And the water's bluer than any water you've ever seen. And I like going to Whistler in that not feeling like normal, like that feeling special. But also I like the Pacific Northwest because like that they have a totally different building style than we do out here. They have totally different terrain. And then
it's interesting how the building style is different geographically as well. It's funny that you mentioned that because I didn't really think about it much until you said that. But even like what we're riding in Tahoe compared to how they build in like San Jose, like demo area is like way different, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I went to school in North Carolina, and so a lot of the stuff out in Pisgah I really like. It's gnarly. And
that place looks super fun, man.
Yeah, well, Pisgah is like hard to qualify because like there's so many different parts of Pisgah.
Yeah, I heard it's like really big, like really, really big. It's not like it's like some area like I would say Auburn and has like 50 miles of trails. It's like hundreds and hundreds of miles of trails over like different cities, right?
Yeah, and like Pisgah, it's like there's two like separate parts of Pisgah essentially. There's the Pisgah that I rode up near Boone, which is not too far from where I went to school. I think technically it was Morganton, which was the area that I used to ride. But then you would drive like an hour or two away, and you'd get to the Asheville, Brevard, like Pisgah-ish area, and that was a Pisgah that most people know about. So the stuff that we rode was a little bit less tamed and less maintained, but like it gave you a good thrill.
That's pretty cool. I was looking at your videos, and a bunch of your recent videos are all like 30 minutes long, and I think that everybody has these like numbers that they feel like are the magic numbers. What is it that's making your videos come out to be 30 minutes? Is it something on purpose, or
the first one I did, I kind of tried it as an experiment. I'm like, I'm going to put up this really long video and see how it does. And because what I found is a lot of times in my videos, like my video style has changed many times throughout my YouTube career. And like even some of my videos I feel are like totally different from the video I posted next week. So for me, like the riding videos, I really wanted to give people those videos. I really wanted to give people the sense that they're on board. They're fly on the wall, experiencing a day through my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped looking at it from an artistic point of view, like I did with some of my other videos, where I wanted to make sure they're like extremely well produced. I wanted to still make them well produced, but I also wanted to give this sense of immersion of,
Mm-hmm.
and I think in order to do that, you need to take the time to showcase everything that's happening, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot that goes on a day that does some pretty cool stuff.
Right.
And I found myself liking some creators who are posting really long form videos that I really got to know them a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, it might not be as flashy as like digestible, like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I know like in today's day and age, we want that 2-minute video where we can watch it and then go, I don't know, watch another like GIF or whatever.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to get to know someone over a longer period, because then it really
Mm-hmm.
feels like you know them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention in terms of the watch time, which is like a metric that YouTube grades a video really heavily in
Mm-hmm.
terms of its success, like those videos were performing really well.
Right.
And
Right.
for me, riding is something I do pretty naturally, so it was fairly easy to put out some of those videos.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like if I'm riding with Win Masters or Blake Sampson, these are really fun riders to ride with, and they might not get the opportunity to see these riders ride from a perspective of someone that my audience can relate, or not relate to, but knows.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
Did that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm following you, dude. Hopefully the rest of the internet does. And if not, screw them. That's funny, dude. I totally had something I was going to ask you. Now I can't freaking remember what it was.
That's the story of my life.
Yeah, right. Tell me about it. So, what's something that you think you might have done differently, like looking back?
In terms of YouTube,
Yeah.
I would have dropped out of school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just not even bother finishing.
Nope. I wish I stopped. I wish I listened to my intuition.
Uh-huh. Well, you went to school for business too, right? If I remember right.
Yeah. And so at one point I was racing professionally, doing YouTube, and doing, did I say doing YouTube?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, I was
racing
did it 2 times. going to school for business and marketing, and doing YouTube. So I was doing all 3 of those things at once.
Mm-hmm. That's a busy life, man.
And for me, like, racing was fun, but I like saw the writing on the wall that like this was not something I could make a career on.
Right.
YouTube was like something that like Seth, Brian, Alex, myself were all kind of like the only ones at the time. And then of course across the pond you had GMBN, and that was it. And to me, I was like, there's something here, like something's happening, but I had to dedicate a lot of time to, you know, my studies and all that stuff. And I definitely found that I was like wishing I had more time to focus on making videos and get those videos out. And especially early on in business, there's this term called time value of money, where a dollar in the past is worth more than $1 now. Because the power of what you can do with that dollar, you know, if you invested that $1 in Apple way back in the day, is worth a whole lot more than that $1 that you have presently. And so if I had more time, I wish I could have spent that making more videos, or really kind of honing in on the direction of my channel.
Do you feel like if you were doing the 30-minute videos back when you started, that it would have the same effect that it does now? My assumption is that with the bigger following, it's easier to get people to watch that. Like, I don't think you could start out the gate making 30-minute videos and be successful.
No, because when I started, you didn't have to, but like 6 minutes was like an epic. That like you couldn't make videos much longer than that.
Yeah.
So I was
I
trying to
don't
make
think I've
skills.
ever made a 6-minute video. I talk too damn much.
Yeah, so for me, like I was trying to cram a lot of skill tutorial stuff into a video that was hopefully like about 4 minutes long.
Wow.
And it was really hard to, I would have to really like go to the chopping block to cut out things that I thought were pretty important pieces of information, but
Yeah.
also like points of the video where I thought it would lose people's interest.
Hmm.
And so there's this conflict of like presenting information and also playing to what YouTube's looking for, which is audience retention. And
Hmm.
it's frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but if you go back before Skills with Phil, my channel was like Phil Metz MTB.
Hmm.
And my
Was that a
earliest
separate channel, or it was this one
nope,
just it was named different?
I changed my name on YouTube like
Oh,
at one
okay.
point after I did
Okay.
my like first skills tutorial, and
Uh-huh.
like that series was going to be named Skills with Phil.
Uh-huh.
But it just had such a good ring that I just all right, that's
Stick
going to
it
be the channel name. Yeah.
right on. Yeah, yeah.
But before that, I was doing a lot of building videos or
Uh-huh.
building ish because my buddy had a piece of land and he asked me to build a pump track for him.
Hmm.
And I didn't document the process of building the pump track because I didn't know how to use a camera. I didn't
Hmm.
like cell phone cameras weren't a thing, or if they were, they sucked.
Yeah, right.
And so I didn't have a camera. I never recorded anything that I did. I wish I did in retrospect, but I
Hmm.
didn't. And eventually I got a GoPro and I decided to document the process of me restoring this pump track. And you know, a lot of people when they hear about pump tracks, they think about okay, it's like this boring little two-turn thing. No, this was like this intricate piece of art, if I'm going to toot my own horn, woven in the like thicket of the trees in New England that like had various gap lines and all these like intricate different options that like
Uh-huh.
I could spend hours there and not get bored.
Uh-huh.
And it was all built by hand.
Right.
It
I
was
remember one of the
myself.
first videos I saw, it was like you like packing a berm or something like that. You were like teaching how to do that. And I was like, this is pretty interesting because it's not something that I had ever been influenced with, you know?
Yeah, that was I was maintaining a berm at when I was at college. There we had a a collegiate mountain bike team, and one of our places that we trained was the dual slalom course, and I spent quite a bit of time maintaining that, and that's one of the videos I did make.
Yeah. When so you said what you would change is dropping out of school. Do you think that what you learned in the business and marketing school though really plays into how you run your YouTube channel though? I mean,
So that's tricky, because I think I learned some of my professors were very smart people, and I definitely learned a lot of good things from them.
mm-hmm,
But I don't know after my sophomore year if like the information was I think a lot of stuff that I learned in my first 2 years was actually really good information. And then
mm-hmm,
after it was just like um there's some really good, needle in the haystack pieces of
yeah,
information,
yeah,
but then there's also a lot of like fluff. I
yeah,
mean, so in the big picture, do I regret going to school? Heck no, because I met Haley. So
right.
I met some of my best friends. And so like in the big picture is definitely worth it.
Yeah. I know what you're saying though about the school thing. I know when I went to school for IT, like I always tell people I learned almost everything that I needed to learn in like the first 2 or 3 classes that I took. After that, it was like, dude, I could learn this on my own. You know, like it was more practical to be working than it
It was,
was to be going to school.
yeah, it was also a little bit frustrating because like a lot of like concepts like you learn through YouTube are like being your own I guess boss like through YouTube because like
Yeah.
when I started YouTube there was a lot of stuff like that you had to do back then that you like is really easy or way more simple now.
Yeah.
Like there was no mountain bike audience on YouTube. So, you had to, really pay attention to SEO and think about what terms people are using to search for your videos. Now that's not quite as important.
The algorithm's smarter.
Yeah. But so a lot of the things that you learn in school are very basic and not exactly practical. And I would say some of the most important stuff that I learned in school was how to really, really use Excel to some pretty cool, do some pretty cool things.
Yeah. Right on. I would never put Excel and cool in the same sentence, but I'll let you do it.
I had a professor that made Excel awesome. And
yeah, I can understand, man. Sometimes though, dude, I tell you what, I'll do something trick in that program and then I forget it all by the next time I use it. So anyways, when you were getting started, I was talking to Seth a couple weeks ago and he was talking about basically you and him were kind of some of the bigger channels when you guys first started. Do you remember when you first met him?
Yeah. I reached out to him. So going back when I was at school, my freshman year, Haley and I did a road trip down to Florida for a mountain bike festival in Ocala for the Santos Mountain Bike Festival. Because it was the only place that you could ride at that time that was warm. I had a new bike. It was, I just wanted to go ride, and I just started dating Haley, so we went on a 7-day road trip with barely any showers. We slept in our car and we rode a bunch of cool places. But the next year we wanted to go back to Ocala, and in the meantime, I had kind of seen some of Seth's videos pop up, and I was like, well, he's in Florida. I don't know if he's going to go. I'm just going to shoot this dude an email and see if he wants to, I guess, collaborate. It was weird because I had never really met anyone from the internet before.
Yeah, right.
Because I was still kind of strange back then.
Yeah. When about was this? What year?
I think this is 2015 or 2016.
So your channel would have been about how big at that point?
I'm thinking 10 to 20,000.
So Seth was probably not much bigger than that.
Yeah, he was always at that point he was a third to 2/3 bigger.
So he might have been around 50K or something like that.
Yeah, it's hard to remember. Yeah. I know he was bigger, but
yeah, I get it. I'm just trying to get a feel for it. That's all.
Yeah.
So you hit him up.
Yeah, and it was cool because I think we were the first mountain bike collaboration ever on YouTube.
Yeah, right on. That's pretty cool. Do you remember when you met Alex?
So I'd watched a bunch of his videos because him and the gang all went to why can I not think of the
I know
Moab?
What you're talking about. Yeah, Moab. Yeah.
Those videos exploded, and
yeah,
I finally met Alex for the first time when he came up to do the New England Sampler series with me.
You know what he told me on the show when I had him on?
What?
He said he remembers when you guys met each other that you told him, I didn't really think you were going to be this smart. He said you guys had some kind of conversation and it was a little deeper, and he's like, I really just thought I didn't think you had that much depth to you or something along that line. So it was pretty funny. He's like, you got to say something to Phil about it. It'll be hilarious.
It's funny. I don't remember that that specific moment, but I can definitely acknowledge that feeling, because a lot of times what you see on camera is just a small sliver of somebody.
Yeah.
And so if someone was to judge me by what they see on my videos, they would come to that conclusion.
Oh, dude, you're telling me something. Look at the guy with all the beer bottles behind him. That's funny. So is there anybody on YouTube that you fanboy about?
I don't know. I guess I mean, I think at one point in time, everyone fanboyed over Casey Neistat, but I think you're looking for a little bit better answer than that.
I don't think it matters.
So if I was to see Marquez Brownlee, I think that's one person I'd be kind of starstruck.
Oh yeah.
Or the closest to starstruck
I don't know
I
who that
think
guy is. Can you tell me who it is?
MKBHD does tech review.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And I've been following him for ever. Oh, and
Yeah.
I'll throw Philip DeFranco in there.
Yeah.
I
think I would say like Peter McKinnon. I don't know if you know him. He's like a camera guy. And I really like Mike Boyd. Have you ever watched his stuff?
Oh yeah.
He's like, for those of you guys that are listening, he does videos on like how to do stuff that's like mundane, like how to rip a phone book in half, but he like times it, so it's really cool. It's like
he did a video with Ben Cathro.
Yeah, I saw that. Like back whenever his channel was pretty small too.
Yeah, his channel had a substantial, or Cathro's channel was pretty small at the time.
I think Ben's was too, or Mike Boyd's was too, because he blew up like overnight. Like he
found his secret sauce.
Yeah, no, he definitely hit the jackpot when he figured that one out. So that's crazy too. I mean, it's like there's so much content out there. Like it's just hard to wrap your head around. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But if you're asking, like, are those the channels I necessarily like watch the most? I would say there are other channels that I wouldn't necessarily fanboy over if I saw them. Like, oh, that's cool. That's that person. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. What channels do you like to watch?
Lately, I think the channel. Well, there's like 5 channels I watch on a regular basis. The most recent one is. The channel name is just someone's name, Andrew Camarada. And just a dude who lives in upstate New York. And so the way I found out about him is kind of funny because it's related to mountain biking. I met his sister at a small, there's a enduro race, and his sister was running a stand doing women's apparel. And down the road, I was, I'm always looking for business opportunities. So I was kind of thinking about maybe doing my own product line at some point. So I kind of, this is when I kind of got the feeling that Fox was starting to stonewall me, and they weren't going to renew their contract. So I was like, all right, let's come up with another plan. So I reached out to her about, what it took to do what she did. And then in that conversation, she's like, yeah, my brother has a YouTube channel. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll check him out. Turns out like he has a pretty big channel, and like he takes, he's just, I guess, a contractor who documents his projects. But like, that involves like, oh, my excavator just broke. I need to diagnose and figure out why this isn't working. And like, he will like detail every little bit that you like feel like you understand what's going on, and then like everything like it like he does, it's like, okay, that's I understand how to do that now. Then he built this like shipping crate container castle as his garage, and like it's stuff that he doesn't necessarily have like the flashiest equipment, but he like gets the job done, and it's like impressive.
You said there was 5 altogether. What was some of the other ones?
About 5. So other than that, I really like Wendover Productions, which you've probably seen at some point. He does a lot of kind of informative kind of content, like a lot of stuff about airplanes. And he has like another channel that's a little bit more funny and like lighthearted. CPG Gray, which is in the same boat of informative stuff. Like, I'm not really into politics, but if you want to know how a political, I guess electoral college works, or runoff elections work, he did a very completely unbiased, using animals, explaining how
how it works out.
How it works out in the U.S., where we only have 2 parties, and that mathematically but anyway, he does a lot of weird stuff, and you never know what the topic is going to be, but it's going to be interesting. And then there's another one that's a little bit more related to civil engineering, called City Beautiful. It just talks about some like urban design stuff that you would just overlook. And how it has a huge effect on how people, commute through a city or whatever, like how zoning like really can like make or break a town, and like weird stuff like that. I just like knowing stuff.
Yeah, I think when you said earlier that you like documentaries, and judging by the type of YouTube that you're telling me about, I can understand. You're an inquisitive person. You know, I like to say that I like to learn, you know, and I think that's why I enjoy watching that kind of stuff, because I feel like I'm always learning. And that's fun. I mean, I like to be entertained too. You know, there's like Hot Ones is just, you know, entertainment, but it's really fun. You know,
yeah, I should have thrown Hot Ones under there too, because I do watch that quite a bit. But it's more or less like I need something to watch that's 30 minutes long. What's the latest Hot Ones episode? I don't think I'm actually subscribed.
Yeah, it's easy to like, you're like, oh, I'm gonna eat lunch. What am I gonna watch? Oh, I'll throw Hot Ones on real quick or something like that. Did you see the interview I did with BKXE last week?
I did. I'd been thinking about picking up that bomb hot sauce along with I was hoping, like, I really wish Hot Ones had a full line. Yes.
Yeah.
Like I would totally get that in you know, Suffer. Like I think at Christmas time a lot of stores had like the knockoff crappy versions of it where they had like a scale. My sister got it for me. It was actually pretty fun, but you know, I want to taste like the real stuff.
Yeah, I don't understand. I am 100% with you. Like, I don't understand why they don't have a pack that's like season 4, and they're all like little bottles that are like big enough to just like have the taste on a couple of wings. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then you'd be able to go through the whole lineup that they use on season 4 or season 5 or whatever it is. Like, and I would pay more for that. Like, obviously, like you know, like, was a bottle like $10 a bottle? I mean, I'd probably pay $50-$60 to get the lineup and just to try it. You know what I mean?
I would love to see that.
I've been so curious about that bomb sauce for so long, because like I've eaten some pretty hot stuff here and there, and when I first started eating wings, like I didn't even really like hot stuff at all. Like I remember going to Hooters and getting like mild and being like, "Whoa, that's a little warm," you know. And like, you know, with anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it, right? But that one, it just destroys everybody on the show. And so I was always like, how bad is it? You know, like how bad is it?
It seems like that one's more about how bad the taste is. Like there's no redeeming qualities.
I think that's what it comes down to, is like it just smacks you in the face with like, to me, it tasted like battery acid. It was like no flavor whatsoever. Like you get burned by battery acid, and then all of a sudden your mouth's just on fire. You know, it's like, all right, there you go. I kind of wondered when I did that with him too, like, you know, when you're on the show, you're like eating things that you're like leading up to it. I wonder if it's not as bad if you've already like kind of been warmed up a little.
I mean, I think Sean Evans has talked about that. So like sometimes they'll do like the ones where like the like cast will come out and do the last wing with the main person being interviewed. And like he's said it himself that it's harder to do just the last one than it is to like gradually go through the motions.
That guy's a champ, man. Just watching the way that he like can keep his stuff together, dude.
He's awesome. Like he is great like at what he does. And
I actually go ahead.
Go on.
Oh, I watched a video about him just recently, just to like, he was on a podcast, like talking about how he like researches people and stuff. It was pretty interesting.
Was that the Philly D? I think he was on a conversation with, or he did another one with H3H3.
I think it might have been H3H3 that he was on. Yeah. It might have been that one or not. I don't know. I was just, it caught my feed, and, you know, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Kind of goes along with what I do, Biker Bar. But I mean, the people that he's looking up are so different than like the people I'm looking up, you know, like they're like these huge stars or whatever. He's like, yeah, check the local newspaper. I'm like, I could check the local newspaper where Phil lives. There's not gonna be any stories about him, you know.
I hope not.
Yeah, or I'll be like digging for a while, you know what I mean? Like, so that's funny. What do you want to do with the channel that you haven't done yet?
So it's going to be so I've talked about this way back, and it's been a slow process getting like, you know, things take time. And like, so if you go back in some of my early videos or some of the old interviews, I said this a long time ago that my biggest goal is to eventually open up my own bike park. At it still seems like it's way far away. There are so many things I need to do myself before I ever get to that point. But
what is it that's appealing to you about that?
I love building. I love being able to. I want to build all of the crazy things that are in my head. Like I want to be able to, because like I love riding, but I also like building in more of an artistic sense, something that people like to ride. And it's also a puzzle, figuring out how to drain the water so it doesn't erode the trail, build stuff that looks appealing and rides. Like there are so many things that I like about building that fulfills another need that, and I like, frankly, I'd also like to be able to build a place where that has a smart way to progress your skills. And I haven't quite seen, I've seen like, progression areas, but to me, like they always, it's like you draw the circle. Okay, now draw the rest of the owl. Like, you left out all the other steps. And to me, like a lot of people can learn how to mountain bike and do a lot of cool things on a mountain bike without a coach if they have the right environment.
Yeah. That's a really good point, man. There's I've seen some stuff like maybe in Bentonville that looks like they have like that like progression training down pretty well. But I know for me locally, like I've said that a million times, like I wish there was a place where it's like, here's the 1 foot jump and then the 2 foot jump and then the 3 foot jump, and they're all next to each other and you can keep doing them until you feel comfortable with that. And then here's the skinny that's 8 inches wide, and here's the skinny that's 6 inches wide, and here's the one that's 4 inches wide, and here's the one that's over a hole in the ground. Like that would be like an awesome place to go to really be able to work on your skills. Go ahead.
There are like so many things. Like I brought Haley to a skate park last year. I took going down a steep roll-in for granted because, like, I've done it a million times. But if you've never done one before, it's really scary. So just having a few roll-ins that get progressively steeper and steeper, and then maybe as we get towards the like bigger, like steeper ones, now we can start adding some think about adding some unevenness to them. And then maybe there's a way we can add in some off camber in a way that the progression makes sense. There are lots of interesting things I would like to try to help kind of help people progressively push their skills so they're not just sink or swim.
There's a lot of bike parks around, but they're basically, like pump tracks. So there's not really usually, maybe there's a feature or two in them that'll be some kind of skills thing. But for the most part, I really like what you're saying, man. Would you build it there in New England or?
I mean, I'd like to be, because I'd like to stay close to home. I don't know business-wise if that would necessarily make sense, but there's a lot of people who come from like Montreal, Boston, New York to this area. So I don't think almost anywhere in the like northern part of New England that would be a bad area. It's just like, some parts of Vermont have Vermont in general is kind of hard to do business in many ways, because especially if you're doing any kind of development on land, there's something called Act 250, which is what Kingdom Trails is kind of going through. Whereas if you're doing something for commercial reasons on property, the state has to come out and do this whole survey to see how it's going to impact, and like whether you're building a 80 story high rise or you're building a mountain bike trail. It has to go through the same vetting process, and it's kind of it's a lot. It's a lot, and actually, one of the things that is the Vermont Mountain Bike Association is trying to help reword the way that amendment law, whatever it's called, is written to give mountain biking a little bit better of a separation, because the impact of a little skinny mountain bike trail and a giant sky rise or high rise are two different things.
Right. They're worlds apart. That's crazy. So I cut you off when you were saying, you know, that you wanted to do the building. How did that tie into the channel, like the future of the channel?
So if you go back to my earlier videos, I was doing a lot of building.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, like, I've never had my own piece of property.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've never had my own place to, like, I've always built on other people's property.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, it's not your property, so you have to build for other people.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have my own piece of property to kind of do what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you know, I think any kid who grows up as a mountain biker has that dream.
Yeah.
And so before Skills with Phil, that was a huge part of my life, and
Mm-hmm.
been something that I wanted to share. In the meantime, every other channel is doing it, so it's like, well, crap, like, you know, I don't want to just be another building channel, so I don't think you're going to see that on Skills with Phil. I think what I'm going to end up doing is do a whole nother channel related to more building stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I make no promises, but you know, in my head, that's kind of what I'm going with.
Yeah. If you could snap your fingers and be really good at anything else in life, like tomorrow, what would it be?
Communicating.
Yeah, just that's it. You don't feel like you're a good communicator?
No. I feel like when I'm in the right mindset, I can articulate all right. But
Mm-hmm.
you know how you meet someone who's charismatic and
Mm-hmm.
they just somehow are able to really communicate their thoughts with ease, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like that at all.
Yeah.
And you know, as much as like some people like to relate to people who are a little bit more I guess less perfect,
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain point where like you listen to Elon Musk talk and it's like, what are you trying to say? The guy is brilliant, but his thoughts aren't coming out. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to compare myself to Elon Musk because I'm definitely not nearly as smart. But I actually, when I hear him talk, I'm like, wow, I feel like that's how I sound.
Yeah.
And so, but then you go and you hear someone like Steve Jobs talk.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously he's not talking anymore, but like when he
Right.
talked, he had a way of presenting information that made sense.
Uh-huh.
And I wish I had that.
Yeah. Well, apparently you're doing something right, man. You got a couple 100,000 followers on YouTube, so you're probably a little better.
Effort.
Yeah, probably a little better at communicating than you think.
I have to spend a lot of time thinking about how to phrase something so it makes sense because I can't do it off the cuff.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that fortunately I'm good at, but you know, sometimes it's a pain in the ass too, you know. I've been purposely, like when I started my channel, I wanted to just be like get out in front of the camera and talk, and like I never wrote a script, I never did any voiceovers, and like I just wing it, you know. And like this, like I don't write down any questions or anything like that, I just kind of go as I go. But I feel like whenever I started taking the time to actually think about that stuff, that, you know, it's changed my quality a lot, you know, regardless of whether or not I am good at just speaking off the cuff. Like maybe there was a little too much confidence there too, because once I started writing out a script and all of a sudden my videos started doing better, it's like, okay, well, I guess that means something. So I don't know. I think we all have our own way of doing things, you know, and I think you just got to do what works best for you.
I mean, I'm not sure if I would be where I am if I wasn't presented with that challenge, but it's definitely something I wish I was better at.
Yeah, I know. I hear you there. I think, yeah. Did you ever think your channel was going to have a couple 100,000? What are you at right now? Like 325, something like that?
375. I think I'll
almost 4.
be hitting.
Holy cow.
Yeah. You know, I don't know. Like I remember when I got my first 1,000 subscribers, I was like, or even 100, I was like, holy crap. Like, and that, like, there's like that number is like what 1,000 meant back then.
Mm-hmm.
With inflation means a lot more than what 1,000 means now.
Yeah.
So I I didn't think, if someone told me that I'd have 100,000 subscribers, I would say no way. Like, there's not enough mountain bikers. Like, no one had a smartphone, so
Yeah.
no, or I mean, very few people had smartphones, so not that
There's
many
not enough people riding that actually watch YouTube, you would think.
Yeah. And then once, everyone had a smartphone, people watching YouTube exploded. Like, it was second nature.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what else are you going to do on the toilet? Yeah, no, it's crazy to me, man. Like, honestly, like I've been doing it a while. I'm kind of like locally successful. I'm definitely not like successful in any other manner than that. So like those numbers that you guys have just seem, so far out of reach to me, but who knows, maybe I just keep plugging away at it. Do you got any advice for people that are starting out?
It's getting tougher and tougher. So it's definitely hard to, you need to see a niche of something that needs to be filled or something that's lacking. When I started on YouTube, there's no mountain bike content. So, or there's very little mountain bike content. And so I tried to fill that. And so that brought in, I'm not tooting my own horn because there's more than myself who brought in mountain biking to YouTube. That brought in an audience. And as that audience gets bigger, the needs gets more diversified. You have people who just want to know about how to work on their bike. You have people who want to learn how to build. You have people who want to see how long brake pads actually last. Like these things, there become more and more needs to be fulfilled. To have fulfilled. So you just have to be observant and think to yourself, what is missing that you want? That's, I guess, the best piece of advice. It's a lot of people say like you got to grind it out, and there definitely is a lot of grinding. And I've also made a point to make sure that I'm not sacrificing the quality of life for my work.
I was just going to ask you that, how you balance between, because now this is your full-time job. You don't have school anymore. It's like just doing YouTube. Like I could see easily getting sucked into that because there's not like ever you're done, like you finish a video, but you're already having to like the next one, or like, oh, I could do more content in a week, or so it's like, how do you balance that? And then also, like a personal life,
Yeah. And I've tried to do, for me, like I'm a mountain biker, and I need to go on rides. I know some of my fellow creators who don't ride that much, and that's something I cannot sacrifice. I have to ride. It makes me happy. If I'm not happy, what you're seeing is gonna suck.
Yeah, totally.
And I think about things as I'm riding and kind of like, that might be an interesting way to explain this as I'm hitting a giant gap. Not really, but
no, I get it.
It's one of the things where mountain biking is very therapeutic. It's like my personal identity. It's my social life. So that has to be all right before my work is all right. But I think my channel has been kind of, I haven't been super excited about my channel. I've been putting out content. I was really happy with my bunny hop video. It's like one of the videos I've been like more happy with in a long time. And then but there's stuff that I want to do that I feel like, due to living in a 1-bedroom apartment, has been rather challenging. And I think that will be changing, but who knows? I'm not a stranger to the fact that there's a lot of wishful thinking, and sometimes I like think things are going to get better, and then you kind of revert to your old habits.
Yeah, sometimes life likes to smack you in the face too. But so basically what you're saying is you're going to buy another castle like Seth, and you're going to start building trails.
Not quite.
But you're not getting a Seth castle.
I wish, man. Like that place is sweet.
Yeah, that's pretty sick, dude. It's definitely pretty cool. And you know, like what he's done with the property too is pretty entertaining.
If you get a chance to go, it's cool. And like, you know, just watching his videos, like, you know, his, not only can he tell a good story, but like what he's done from like since the beginning to where it's gone now, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. No, it was super fun talking to him. That was kind of a fanboy experience for me. I don't normally get nervous when I talk to people, and I mean, I've had some pretty big companies on the show in the past, and like I don't typically get nervous, but I was definitely nervous when I had him on. Like I was like, don't fuck this up, don't say the wrong thing, you know. Like
luckily he's a pretty easy person to talk to.
Yeah, no, definitely. He's got a poker face though, because there's some times where I'm like, I don't know, I can't tell if he's like digging what I'm saying, and then he would answer, and I'd be like, okay, I get it. But his like I'm listening to you face is like, I don't know if I'm in trouble or not right now.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, that's crazy. So so you're working with GT. What kind of bike are you riding right now?
So lately I've been riding the GT Sensor, which is their short travel 29-inch bike, which is, you know, my first 29er. My whole life I've been on 26 or 27. So you kind of paint this image in yourself in your head. You're like, oh, I don't ride 29. So for me to like jump over to 29er was like kind of like breaking that. But I wanted to like get out of a rut and try something different.
What was it that did it for you? I can tell you right now, I was the same way. Like 27.5 is like good for me. I don't want to. Every time I rode a 29er, I didn't like how it kind of like took you through the trail instead of you like putting it through the trail. And when I got my Chameleon, it was like the first time I ever rode a 29er that like had really great like action, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like it was like actually kind of flickable, and like I didn't feel like it was telling me where to go.
Yeah.
And it changed my mind, you know, totally changed my opinion.
So one of the reasons is I wanted a shorter travel bike. And the sensor and the Force are very, very similar bikes. If you look at the geometry, the numbers, they share a lot of the same qualities.
Yeah.
But the Force is it's 27.5 and a little bit bigger in terms of travel. Great bike. I love it. But most of my rides, I don't need that much travel.
Yeah. I feel like so many people are overgunned.
I think there's a place for that. I think it helps with confidence when going over sketchy features. There's more cushion, like in terms of like there's more margin of error. It'll get you out of a lot more tricky situations.
Yeah.
Where I really like to focus on precision, and I find a smaller bike lets me really practice, like, you know, not necessarily practice, but like I have to be very accurate with my wheel placement.
Yeah. I can 100% agree with you. I've been when I bought my Chameleon, it's a hardtail in case you didn't know. Like I honestly bought it for content on the channel. I was like, oh, this would be cool. I can like buy the bottom of the line bike and I can show people how I'd upgrade it, and I'll have this other bike to ride and yada yada yada. You know what I mean? And realistically, I didn't think that it was going to be the bike. Like I am struggling to take my full suspension bike out unless I'm going somewhere like super gnarly. And I mean, I'm riding places that are pretty gnarly, so it's not like it's like I'm riding all like just smooth bermy trails, you know. It's like rocky chunky stuff I'm doing, but I think it's because of like what you said. It's like I have more to think about. I have like, it feels better whenever I make it through something crazy complicated, and I'm like, oh wow, dude, I totally did that, you know. I think that the shorter travel bikes are gonna make a comeback personally.
Yeah, going back to the short travel thing that you're talking about, it feels like you're going faster when you're on a short travel bike. And so you can get the sense of going fast in a safer environment because you might not be going quite as fast. So if you do crash, you're not going to get as hurt. So in many ways, it's a kind of a natural limiting factor to, you know, prolong how long you're riding for, you know, in the big picture. I don't know if that makes sense. So
yeah, no, I totally hear what you're saying, man. I think that, whatever makes you get out and ride, right?
sure.
And so, but I definitely, I've been enjoying the hell out of it. I can't talk well enough about it, like somebody getting a shorter travel or a hardtail, and just like it's like a whole new experience of riding again, and it's just, for me, it's been so much fun. It's like I think back all the people I talked out of their hardtail into getting like a full suspension bike, and in some cases the full suspension is definitely the way to go. Like in a lot of cases it's the way to go. I think especially for like, I don't know, man. It's kind of a toss-up. Would you say you think it's better for somebody to have a hardtail to start or a full suspension? Because the full suspension will give you the confidence when you're screwing up.
Yeah, well, I usually look at it in terms of budget.
Yeah.
What you can get for your money. So hardtails are better in that sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And the other thing there's a lot less to maintain on a hardtail. Like you spend so much time dicking around with a bike trying to maintain it, that if you can remove the rear linkage, to try to now you're not spending that time figuring out why it's squeaking or why one of the pivots is these or whatever. You can just go out and ride, and that's more important. Like you're not spending time researching like, oh, what where do I buy DU bushings? What kind of hardware do I need for my shock? Like, but in terms of, if I told people what to start out to ride, I would probably tell people to start out with like a full rigid or BMX or something. But I think most people will just want an easy way into the sport, and I can't blame them. So full suspension is a very safe way to get into the sport.
Yeah, it definitely makes up for a lot of mistakes, but I don't know if it always teaches you the best bike handling skills. Like that's the thing where like the hardtail will, like, it'll teach you how to take lines because you have to, you know what I mean? Like you have to, you can't just go like bulldoze into a rock garden. Like you have to like, hey, I need to go this way and this way and this way, or that thing's going to throw me off,
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on the person. I think there are some people who will be able to pick up how to ride a full suspension and learn how to like ride really well. And there's some people who will always just be a passenger. And there's no other way around it. So like some people are just more natural learners, and
I hear you there. I definitely hear you there. Well, man, dude, we're like right at the 2-hour mark right now, dude. I really appreciate you coming on the show and hanging out with us. It's definitely been super fun chatting with you. Just like last time we chat, or every time we bump into each other somewhere, it's always a good time. Anything you want to say to anybody on the way out?
Man, I hate these because like I'm always like, crap, I need to thank my sponsors, motor oil company, like
like the hot ones. This camera. You promote your new movie,
and then you try to go like, all right, I'll go with the nonchalant way of like answering this, like just thanks for watching, like
right. It's cool. You don't need to have one, dude. I can take it from there. I really appreciate you coming on, dude. Like I said, it's super fun chatting with you. I'm curious to hear what the little nugget of surprise that you were holding on to earlier. So people are gonna have to keep an eye on your channel for that one. I do want to like get all you guys to take a chance to check out Project 321. I'm serious. If you're looking at building some new wheels, they're great hubs. Super impressed with them. And like I said, there's that discount that I talked about. So do that. If you want a bigger discount, you can actually join my Patreon. I got a bigger discount than what I was talking about earlier. Outside of that, Tasco, thanks a lot for sending us some stuff. That was pretty cool. I'm anxious to try the gloves out. They actually sent me a size smaller too. I can give them to the lady, see how she feels about it. Maybe I'll chat about that on the channel somewhere along the line. If you guys haven't hit the subscribe button, please do it, man. I'm dead serious, dude. I need to get to 1,000 so I could get YouTube famous. The dump truck load of money comes in. Everything's gonna be good from there on out. I swear. Please do that. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button if I made you laugh once. If you want to hit the dislike button, hit it twice. That's fine with me. Outside of that, next week, man, we're going to change gears a little bit. Not going to be a YouTuber. I'm going to have somebody from Envy on. So we're going to be talking about carbon hoops and how they do business over there. So I think it's going to be a super interesting conversation. So definitely tune in next Sunday. I think we're going to be going a little early. I think it's like 3 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. because people got schedules, right? So with all that being said, thanks again. I really appreciate you being here, Phil.
Well, thank you. This has been awesome.
Right on, man. Hey, everybody out there, remember, it only takes a bike to be a biker. So get out and be one.